one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Happy New Year to everyone. Before we get started with any substance, this is the first meeting of the year, so we're going to go with our reorganization motion. We had a brief caucus on this, and I guess I'll make the motion. And the motion would be for Mary Coe to be the chairwoman for the coming year and Claire Gerton to be the vice chairwoman for the coming year. Can I get a second? Second. All right, all in favor? Aye. Those opposed? Nay. Congratulations, Mary and Claire. Thank you for stepping up. And that is your gavel, Miss Coe.
Okay, I hope everybody had a chance to look at the minutes. Any changes, problems, issues? Motion to approve, anyone?
I'll move for their approval.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, it was easy. On to reports. Parks and Rec.
Yes, Happy New Year, everyone. We're looking forward to a lot of excitement and challenges as we embark on 2022, of course. As I had noted last year, we're going to have some staffing deficits as we have 2 employees that are going to be out starting their families, which we're very excited about. As a matter of fact, Tracy Kroom is going to deliver any day now. So obviously that puts our department in a little bit of a challenge as we head into 2022, but we're excited. Natalie, who is our recreation assistant, is doing a great job stepping up, as well as Heather DeCanzio, who's taking on, both are taking on some increases to their workloads. So we do have a really busy programming plate right now. We've seen the continuation of programming success, specifically at our preschool level with our preschool basketball program. So a lot of people associate, the youth basketball in the community being run by Radnor Youth Basketball, who we work very closely with, which is their own, they have their own guided organization. But most of their programming starts for about ages 6. So we do take on the preschool level of basketball. And we've seen great success with the programming that we've had that's been running since the fall and then on into the winter. We've had average about 100 kids within the programs that are going on there. So it's really exciting. And of course, our Champions programming continues to be a really great success. So we're excited about that. Our indoor tennis is doing really well. We have a great partnership and program that we run with Radnor Racket. And then believe it or not, we're already starting to gear up for summer. I think every day we receive 2 to 3 inquiries about Radnor Day Camp, believe it or not, from new folks that want to join our interest list. So right now, our location for Radnor Day Camp is a little bit in flux. We're waiting on some confirmations from the school district, trying to understand if potentially we can get back into Radnor Elementary. Otherwise, we'll sort of revert back to last year and go back over to Radnor Activity Center. Not the most ideal, not the top choice for various reasons, but we're obviously going to make a great situation with what we'll end up having in terms of location. But it sounds like there's a lot of interest in the community, which is good, and we have a lot of great staff that we already know that are planning to return. So we're working through that process. By way of events, we can expect the return of some of the events last year that were not in person, back to in person. For instance, our annual Sweetheart Dance, formerly known as the Daddy-Daughter Dance, is getting ready to gear up in early February. It's going to take place on Friday, February 11th at the Inn at Villanova. So we just had a meeting there on Monday, and we were talking about our floor plan and getting organized for that. Right now, we have about 225 participants that are going to be taking part. We do have some withdrawals that are happening. Of course, there's some folks that are concerned over COVID, so we're working with them through that process and trying to encourage everyone if they don't feel safe. We definitely want them to back out of the program. But still, registration's been strong, and we've had a hearty wait list, so we're looking forward to some great success with that. And then, of course, Bishop Richard Allen Park, we have an annual wreath-laying ceremony that's going to take place there. That'll be on Monday, February 14th at 1:00 p.m. If you can join us, it's a short little event. We basically take some time to celebrate the birthday of Bishop Richard Allen and commemorate his historic walk into Radnor Township. And he was the founder of the AME, it's the Methodist, I believe, church. So, and we're looking forward to that. It's every year we've watched the attendance grow. We're going to be in our 4th year this year. So, and
Tammy,
it's-
what was the date and time on
it's
that again?
Monday, February 14th,
Okay, that's what I thought.
and it'll be at 1:00 p.m.
1
We'll be having the teen flashlight egg hunt back along the Radnor Trail in April. We're gearing up for that. And then, of course, the Wheels of Wayne is going to be making its return in May. So I know some of these events sound like they're a little on the far horizon, but for us, they're like tomorrow in terms of planning. So, right now is a unique time for our department because we're not only living in, winter and winter programming, but we're gearing up for spring, we're getting ready for summer. So we're definitely way ahead of ourselves, but that's typically where we spend our time. We're also working diligently through a lot of projects. As I'm sure everyone knows, we just unveiled a new website on behalf of the township, so if you get a chance, check that out. Never hesitate to provide feedback, of course. I know a lot of the Parks and Recreation pages in general are still under draft, and if there's suggestions or information that you have, don't hesitate to reach out to us. And that concludes my report for January.
Thank you, Timmy. Commissioner Farhi, anything from the Board of Commissioners?
Well, first, I just want to say congratulations, Mary, Claire.
Thank you.
I think you guys are going to do great, and thank you for doing this. Bill, thank you for a great year last year. It's greatly appreciated. Other than that, I am glad to talk about the cottage at Fenimore Woods. I took pictures, I put them up online, but it is Maggie Myers, who is a new commissioner. So it's her ward, and if she wants to say a couple words about it, I'd like to hear her, what she has to say.
Sure. Thanks, Sean. We're talking about the stable at Fenimore, and obviously, as you mentioned at the last meeting, the sort of assessment and feasibility for it being converted back into the restrooms at Fenimore. Tammy's going to update us in a little while about the overall progress on the Fenimore Woods project. I think Tammy and I have been throwing some numbers around, trying to figure out, what the baseline to raise RAZE the stable would have been, and it's probably more now in the current light than it would have been when it was initially assessed, because it was supposed to be raised in the original plan. We're trying to get together some numbers as to what a ground-up building of different types of bathrooms there would be, and locations, optimal locations, and there will be another roundtable, smaller group of constituents getting together to discuss those issues. And balancing, we all know that the township really isn't in the business of preserving old buildings, but all things being equal or even a little toward preservation cost-wise, it's always a good thing to preserve old buildings. So I think the weighing of that is where we're standing at this point, and how those numbers are going to shake out.
Okay. Anybody have any questions on that? Is anybody here from the school board? Is our school board folks are not here? All right. Claire, what's up with Shade Tree?
Shade Tree, we're also doing our goals and reorganization and for the upcoming year, and Shade Tree continues to work really closely with Ricky Foster and the township, and we're working to work with getting some grants for tree plantings, and we've continued to up that every year. So Shade Tree is in great shape and continues to do some terrific work. So on track to do the same for 2022.
Okay. Are there any other reports from anybody? I guess not. Okay, moving on to new business. We already did our reorganization, so we are on to the 2022 Township Capital Budget for Parks. and Park Impact Fund project allocation. Is that you, Tammy?
Yes, I can take that. So first of all, just a little bit of a clarification with regards to the Park Impact Fund. I just want to give a little bit of history here. I know that all the members on the Parks and Recreation Board currently were not on the Parks and Recreation Board, or I don't know if you guys were on any other boards even at that point, to know sort of the history and how that came to fruition. So back in 2013, well, actually in 2012, this was a subdivision and land development ordinance that was evaluated. It was actually brought to us by our former township manager as well as our community development director, Kevin Kachansky. So I know they referenced this as something that had been in existence in a lot of other towns and communities, and something that hadn't existed prior here in Radnor Township. And essentially, what it did was it established a provision for the dedication of land and/or fees in lieu of by development, major developments that happen in and around town, residential subdivision and land development plans, and essentially gives an opportunity for the said developer to either dedicate land back to the township or the state, or in some other way that's very detailed, of course, in the ordinance, or a specific per dwelling, per square footage of development fee, a fee in lieu of that comes back to the township. So essentially, when this was approved in 2013, early 2013, and of course the Parks and Recreation Board made a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners to support this, it became official, and funds started allocating appropriately, and they were designated towards park-specific capital improvements. So even though right now we're not operating with a dedicated capital fund for parks for 2022, we have the bond projects, of course, that sit separately from that, and then we have the Park Impact Fund, the Park Impact Fee Fund, that is separate as well from the main general capital budget relative to parks. There's a sum of money that has accrued basically since 2013 that amounts to about $400,000. So what that does is that gives us an opportunity at this point where we can turn around and we can take a look at our capital plan, which we know continues to grow every year, and decide if we want to allocate some funds from that fund to some of the projects. So the only caveat to the fund right now is that $125,000 within it, so of the $400,000, has been earmarked towards Odoriceo Park by a specific developer. So we kind of want to deduct that right off the top and kind of keep that on the shelf, so we know that relative to Odoriceo, we have that as some funding that's going to go relative to park development that we see potentially on the horizon there. So I printed out a copy for all of the board members. Hopefully it's legible. I know I struggle with fine print these days, but I tried to make it large enough so you guys could see it, and I emailed it earlier today. Basically what I provided for you is a copy of sort of I always call it a living and breathing document. I probably sound redundant in always doing that, but it's really, it changes sometimes by day. I actually chose not to put any cost assignments on there for any of the projects that are listed. It's really a compilation of the growing list of park projects that we have in front of us. Some of them outlined within there are the trail projects that are up and running. They have grants, they have bond money dedicated to them. Of course, Fenimore Woods is on there. We know that has specific funding that has been allocated. Some of these projects are relative to stormwater funding. So those are noted as such. Some of them are related to administration, as you'll see on there. But I wanted you to kind of have that overall list. Requests for projects really, as you know, come in from all angles. I mean, we have residents that have very specific requests. We have the commissioners, the Parks Board, and then staff recommendations. So, we're constantly trying to balance a lot of things. And really, I kind of consider this document just sort of like a master of everything, sort of like a collection of all of it, which, as you know, the majority of the projects listed on here are not funded. But at least it's a good consolidated source of sorts that helps us see what the projects entail. And then as, obviously, the community discussion starts to unfold, we start to narrow the focus on these. So, we see that happening on a lot of projects right now. So I wanted to provide that with you. Projects on here span the entire township. I mean, there's really not one park that you could call upon that doesn't have some sort of need in some way, shape, or form, even if it's just maintenance related. And that's just the nature of having so many great facilities and so many parks in high volume across the entire township, and they're used in high demand from, all kinds of segments of our community. So what I wanted to do is, I have a couple of recommendations that I wanted to put forth within this. And then I guess we could have discussion. So I'm happy to kind of lay those all out and you guys can digest them. I don't want to not acknowledge so many park projects that could be done. Odorrissio is something that sat on our list, for the last 15 years. We've been talking about the comfort station there. We've been talking about the parking lot, the ingress, egress. It's very awkward, leading out onto West Wayne Avenue. There's so many things there. We obviously have a great project we'll talk about a little later that's going to start with the basketball court renovation that was funded, obviously, by bond money. Cowan Park is another location. We know that the parking lot over there isn't in good shape. The playground over there needs some help, even though we just had a transfer bridge installed over there, thankfully. But definitely a park that has, a lot of needs. We have playgrounds that are aging, O'Connor Park, Veterans Park, North Wayne Park. Some of these playgrounds are pushing 30 years old. And as we saw at Cowan, we had sort of a spot repair over there, and it cost us over $10,000 to make it happen. So, there's a lot of things that sit out there. Ithan Valley Park is another big one. We know that there's, the wall is crumbling. Along the side of that park, there's a lot of undercutting happening along the roadways. The Radnor Trail, we know at some point, is going to have its stoned area completely replaced, and obviously the macadam replaced. At some point on the near horizon, the skate park's going to have to be replaced. So, these things keep coming, and, as time goes on, we keep adding to that list. So, and I'm sure I've missed a lot that, are near and dear to people's hearts, but I wanted to at least acknowledge some of those. And then just kind of dovetail to probably one of my highest recommendations on this list in terms of spending this money this year would be Anki Park. We have a poured-in-place surfacing over there that's failing. So if you get a chance and you have a moment, take a walk over and take a look at it, and I think you'll see what's happening. Unfortunately, we had what I'll call, I believe it was an installation issue when it occurred in 2014. So the poured-in-place surfacing over there isn't that old. But when it was poured and it was put in place, there were two separate segments that were actually laid into place, whereas it should have been one complete segment of surfacing. And so there was a seam gap that had occurred early on. In fact, we actually saw it at the grand opening, which was in the summer of 2015. I don't know, I think some of you might have been in attendance. We also celebrated the new comfort station at Anki Park. We had the Philly Fanatic. It was really a great event. But we already were seeing the breakdown. And while the contractor did a really good job of coming out 6 times to make repairs over the last several years, they have since gone out of business. And it's weakened our ability to go back after them. And we've met with our solicitor. We've kind of engaged this for the last year to try and see what we could do. But now we're in a situation where the breakdown is pretty significant, and I think it's something that we need to address. Unfortunately, it is costly. And then parallel to that, we're hearing a lot of feedback from the community about the sunshades. And I know that's not news to this board, but we have a lot of folks that have come out and spoke about the sun, beating down on the playground area. And it just seemed like that would be a perfect time to do both projects, since one certified installer would come out and basically do one. It would be like a one-stop shopping type of project. So that would definitely be a #1 project I would be recommending. And then Odorrissio, I think we should evaluate. I know there's been some discussions going on about Odorrissio with residents. I know Commissioner Abel's been holding those and having those discussions and getting feedback, but perhaps a portion of that additional funding could be allocated towards a master plan, where we could come up with a design or a plan on what we want to do. Unless we decide that It's really just the comfort station is the only item that we want to address right now. But I would think that maybe the balance of what that money is that sits there, since the 125 is also allocated directly towards Odoriceo, that maybe we use that as an opportunity in 2022 to really take a serious look at Odoriceo. And again, those are just my suggestions. I'm open to, discussing not only what sits on this list, but if somebody has something else that's not on here that we feel like we need to address or something that needs attention, I just want to have those discussions.
Tammy, should we be prioritizing this, or is that premature? Or are we ready to spend some of this money now? That makes it seem like it's not premature to prioritize.
And I think we're definitely ready to spend it on the projects that we feel are a priority. And I believe the Board of Commissioners is looking for that. I don't want to speak on behalf of them. I know that they're, they've evaluated a lot and heard a lot about, a lot of capital projects that sit out there. But I think at this point, if the Parks Board was to weigh in, it doesn't have to be tonight, but if it is, great. If it's just one project tonight and then continued evaluation, it can be that too. And then ultimately, they would have to decide on whether or not
Yeah.
they approve the project, because they have to approve the funds and how they're allocated within the Park Impact Fee Fund.
Can I jump
Yeah,
in? Just ask a
please.
quick question. Thanks, Tammy. So when you're talking about the, I guess the rubber foundation was not poured correctly and the company's out of business, when we hired them or contracted them, they still had insurance. And this is not a question for you, obviously, it's a question for John, but if that insurance company is still in business, can't we go after them if the work was done not up to par, not up to code, or, you can still go after the insurance company even though they're not there, right?
No.
That's when it was,
Well, it's outside of warranty at this point.
Oh, it is outside? Okay.
According to John, that negated any ability that we do have. And since they're out of business now, they've actually retired, they retired their company during the pandemic. His consultation indicated that we didn't have anything legally to go back on, or anyone legally to go back on.
okay, because, I'm not a lawyer, I'm gonna let Bill Rumford
Yeah,
play
I
lawyer, but.
Kind of live on this every day. Even if they were a viable entity, and even if there was viable insurance, typically a general liability policy, which is I'm sure what they probably had to present, would not provide coverage for workmanship defects. So you could sue them and go through that, but there wouldn't be insurance money standing behind it. The best you could do is bleed some cost of defense money out of an insurance carrier, which probably wouldn't get to the cost you're looking to get.
Okay.
But I like the idea.
Well, I'm happy we got a lawyer on the board, so.
We got to think like that. I don't know about the rest of the board. I'm not ready at this point. This is a big list. And I'm going down the list here thinking, oh, that's important, that's important. Oh, that's important, that's important. Oh, that's important, it's really hard to prioritize, even when you're just sitting here.
Don't you think naturally we're going to end up selecting, Fenimore obviously is going to be at the top, and Odoriceo, and then some of those other projects will kind of.
I don't know, none of it's obvious to me.
Well, just to clarify, Fenimore's funded. There's a bond allocation, so that one is, nothing's going to slow that down, other than just the process.
Yeah.
We're moving ahead.
If I may.
Yeah.
Realistically, that money's not going to fund that project. My question would be, putting aside my pessimism on our ability to fund Fenimore with the current bond as it continues to erode, is there any safety issues on that list that jump out, Tammy,
question.
that would be something of more immediate urgency? And I suspect tied into the Anki surface, that's a safety issue, but is there anything else there as well?
Well, Anki definitely is a safety issue. I don't believe there's anything else eminent in terms of safety, in my opinion. I think that providing better pedestrian access to Anki is very, very important. So if, that would be a safety issue, I think that would tie in there. Of course, that would require engineering and design. It wouldn't be an immediate fix, as far as a project would go. I know we have walking path and resurfacing repairs that are needed, but, I think Public Works does a good job of, cutting and filling those as needed, and essentially putting Band-Aids on where needed. So I think that from usable standpoint of facility, weighing use, traffic, all of that, that would be the one to me that sits out there at the top.
Thank you.
I think I think safety is one, it's probably one of the more important ones, one of the factors to consider. I mean, probably not the only factor, but there probably are, if we sat, we could come up with a half a dozen factors to consider in what makes something a priority project. So I think we need the time to do that kind of thinking, figure out, well, what are the factors to consider that would put something at the top of the list, and then go through it and then discuss this. Maybe we put this on the agenda to discuss more thoroughly at the next meeting. Does that sound reasonable to folks?
That's fine.
Did you want to speak?
I hope I'm not out of order. I know public participation is later, but I've got a point on one of the projects, one aspect of one of the projects. And I'll introduce myself. I'm Jim Higgins. I live on the 3rd Ward, 102 Luella Avenue. And I was a commissioner, Radnor Township commissioner for 14 years. Retired from that now. But I'd like to ask you to give very, very serious consideration to sunshades at Anki and at Clemmacrone playgrounds. I have grandchildren. I've taken them there for the last 2 years. And I must say, from about May the 1st until September the 1st, those playgrounds are unusable. In the old days, before global warming, we could say that we could tolerate 2 weeks in July, maybe 2 weeks in August, where you don't go to the playground because it's too hot. Well, now that time period is much, much longer. And so as a practical matter, the playgrounds are really usable only March, April, October, and November. So I'd like to ask you to put that at the top of your list. I'm very glad to hear that Tammy has it that way also. I sympathize with you, especially what Mary Coe said, that there's so many worthy projects here. Certainly Odoricio, to have comfort stations there is important. But I would ask you to seriously consider making a recommendation to fund sunshades at Clemmacrone and at Anki. I think Tammy has said that if we're going to do sunshades, that she told me this personally, privately, if we're going to do sunshades, we should start with just one of the playgrounds to see how it goes. And sunshades are the answer. Trees, you can't possibly put trees in and expect them to provide protection for the little children. They're going to take a long time to work. So, and the money, I know that the bond, I don't think the bond issue has any more funds available for Anki or for Clemmacrone. So it's going to be up to the impact fund that you have to solve this problem. And I hope sincerely that you do go ahead with sunshades at Anki, and if you can do it, also at Clemmacrone. Okay, thank you very much.
I mean, I think that's a really good point. I'm wondering if that's this is really a pathetic comment, but I'm wondering if there are going to be grants for climate change adaptation that might cover this sort of thing. It may not be the highest priority. It's not like building dikes around Manhattan, but your point about how climate change is affecting everything, and including parks and recreation facilities for us, and which all ties in with our health and welfare. So maybe we should keep an eye out for that sort of thing as well. But thank you for your input. Any other? So maybe next month we talk about this.
Yeah, I was going to ask Tammy if you had any ballpark figures for that kind of, if we looked into that so far, and if there's any kind of a ballpark.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a little bit of a moving target over the course of the last few years, so there has been an allocation in the plan over the years. So just the ballpark, again, don't quote me on these prices. I'm actually trying to get them updated, and then every time I kind of get them updated, the projects delay, and then, we end up further ahead. But if we were to redo the poured-in-place surfacing, as well as the sunshades, we're probably somewhere around the $130,000 to $150,000 range. That's another reason why the costs aren't listed on there, is because, some of them take a little while to digest because there's been such marked change in the last couple years in terms of fees, in terms of costs for projects.
If I may piggyback, how much of that cost is the sunshade?
Well,
Again,
so, yeah,
approximately.
sure. So about, let's say, about 60 to 70,000, because I know in talking with Jim earlier this evening, the desire would be not only to cover the entire structure, the main play structure, but we also would want to cover the benches and, the picnic table that's over there too. So you could end up with, 3 structures for the bench and the picnic tables, and then one larger structure that's over the entire play area. And that's a lot of coverage. I had also mentioned, there is an investment of time that's going to go into these. We're going to want to take them down during the winter. We're certainly not going to want a snow load on top of them. That'll certainly weaken the investment. And, if, even though I think we can get them so that they're rated to be able to accommodate a 90-mile-an-hour storm, we also have a lot of hurricanes that happen around as well. We're going to want to take them down, put them up each year. I think it's important for that. And they're also fabric structure, so, they're not going to last forever. So they will be an investment in perpetuity.
Is there an expected life on those, the sale portion of it?
I think it's at least 15 to 20 years, but one of the things I want to do is I want to ask around to colleagues and see what their experience has been, because again, sometimes it depends on the manufacturer, depends on where they're located. Obviously, if these things are in Florida, they probably don't last as long because there's, increased UV, but, there's a lot of factors. So I need to do a little bit more research there.
Tim, you sort of answered this already. Are we aware of any of these, well, maybe they're not up now that it's winter, I mean, locally that we could see?
There are. I believe there's a few down in Lower Merion.
Lower Merion?
And I believe there's some out in Upper Providence, Montgomery County as
That'd be
well
helpful.
that we can look into.
And one question I have is, are there retractable ones that, I know that they have them available, but are they available for parks, like retractable, so that we wouldn't have to do anything like that in terms of removing them?
They are, but they would require electric.
Okay.
So then there would be the installation of electric adjacent, and that would really open up a lot more pieces and parts to the project, of course.
Okay.
Is there only really one prototype, that sale? That's what I'm picturing with the stanchions, is that kind
And there's a few different manufacturers that are sort of like the lead players in the game, I'll say. Game Time is a big company that makes them for game time playground structures, and there's Play World structures, landscape structures. All the different playground manufacturers have their own.
Okay, any more questions or input on that? All right, lots to think about. All right, let's move on to old business. We have quite a bit. Fenimore Woods Park renovations project. We've discussed this several times in the last couple of months. At this point, I think we're still taking input from the community. And do we need to make a determination of whether we think we need another roundtable type meeting, or do we want to discuss that?
So right now, we have one scheduled, which is something I'd like to talk about. We have one scheduled for Tuesday, January 25th. Originally was scheduled to be in this room.
Okay, and we're supposed to move ahead.
I understand there's a school board meeting that now took the place of that this night, so I'm trying to kind of sort through that, because I'd like to keep the room and keep the meeting, especially since it's been advertised for at least the last 45 days, I believe. So I guess the question that I'd have for the board is if in fact we end up, needing to edge out for the school board meeting to happen here, would we want to hold it on Zoom? And would that be productive? I mean, I'd like to keep the discussions going, so I don't want to not have that opportunity. There's also the opportunity to go upstairs in the administration area to hold the meeting up there, but it is a very small space, and I think we've been averaging about 35 people at our meetings that have been, focused on discussion, and might even be greater as we get towards the end of the month, as we've been continuing to advertise pretty strongly on that.
Well, Zoom is not, I think we can all agree, the optimum way to handle a large sort of roundtable meeting. On the other hand, given COVID impacts lately, some people might not be comfortable, showing up at a live meeting anyway. I don't know, what do you got, any comments from the rest of the board here?
I keep the conversation going, yeah, Zoom is not optimal, but I'd like to keep the feedback, participation going, because people will drop out and back and forth, and you could be 3 months down the road, and some, I meant to come, but I didn't, so we're, that's just my personal.
Yeah, no, I'm inclined to agree. Any other, Bill, you look like you have a thought?
Just like I say, a question, is this meeting designed to try to start the process of prioritizing what items of the dozen or so we've discussed are priority? Because as I alluded to earlier, we obviously don't have enough money to fund all those things. So we're gonna have to pick and choose, or at least collectively pick and choose. Is that what we're looking to do, or are we still open forum, let it fly?
So, I mean, I think the big elephant in the room is the stable, the future of the stable, and or whether or not that would become a new building. I think that is sort of the cornerstone of what that money, entails and how we spend it. So just to give a little bit of feedback to where we've traveled since our December 9th meeting, which seems so long ago, but really wasn't. You all had voted, of course, the Parks Board voted to support the feasibility study that Gannett Fleming was going to do. We took it to the board on December 13th. It was tabled just to give an opportunity to bring it back, to have Maggie Myers take her seat. She's the ward commissioner, which happened on January 3rd. And then also to be able to bring in the hazmat, the hazardous materials portion of the proposal, and have that part of it so that it was one look at this by the Board of Commissioners. So I've been working with Gannett Fleming to get that. We've just gotten that this week. So they have a subcontractor out in New Jersey that would be performing the look of the mold, the asbestos, any other type of substances in and around the building. So we finally have that, and that will actually be on the agenda for the Board of Commissioners review and approval on the 24th, which is the night before, of course, our anticipated roundtable meeting. But as you know, that's just the approval for the study. Gannett Fleming is still going to have to do it with their subcontractor, and you're probably looking at a month to 2 month process, at least at that point, so that we can get some information back. So I think that is a big piece that we need to understand. That's part of this, so we can start to evaluate where we're going to go. I know we're trying to make as quick a progress on it as we possibly can. In the meantime, we have gotten some feedback on the pavilion. It's something we could discuss on the 25th and kind of step through. We were able to get an assessment there. But we don't have a lot of information other than the outline we put together at the last roundtable meeting in November. So I think we want to keep building on that, but I think we have a pretty good idea of where we want to go. It's understanding the stable, I think, that is now sort of getting us, up and over the hump, to start making some serious progress. Because ultimately, in another couple months at least, I think we want to send our designers back, to put a proposal together, so we can get them moving.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Commissioner Farr.
No.
I don't want to interrupt. Tammy, is this meeting going to be televised? or
No, the
recorded?
roundtable meetings
Okay.
Typically haven't been.
Okay.
Obviously, if it was on Zoom, we could record it and re-show it.
Mm-hmm. So that's definitely the advantage of Zoom, but if it's, you're adamant, or this board is adamant, whatever that recommendation is, I'm fine with. I don't know Could you use the Willows? Could you use, you know, and I'm throwing it out there, I'm not saying they would let us, but I know like the firehouse has a big hall upstairs, and their Supposio gym, could we put a couple seats around? I'm just saying if we're adamant about having it, could we maybe move it, postpone the meeting a half hour, so when people come and see it's a school board meeting, it's on the door, hey, it's at another location. If it's not being recorded, I see the advantages of it being recorded, but if we had it here and it's not being recorded, then, and you want to have it so we can move this process forward, you know, I could go either way, just an idea that, again, this board and as well as Commissioner Myers can kind of poll her constituents to see what, you know, what everyone's most comfortable with.
And I've also asked Peggy Hagan to go back to the school board and see if they would make a concession as well, just given the circumstances. We've had this meeting planned since November, so, and this is a high priority project. So I think we're going to wait for an understanding of that, but we
Okay.
can certainly reach out to the fire company. Sulpizio Gym wouldn't unfortunately be available, but if there's something that can work that's larger than the upstairs at the fire
You know,
company.
maybe Cabrini or Eastern, because
Maybe,
it's right in their
absolutely.
backyard. Maybe they have a room, or
It's certainly possible.
Howard, you know, your church, you know,
Yeah, that's
those things can double up real well.
Yeah.
The
Just an
RTCA
idea,
would be great.
just an idea, because
I was going to suggest the RTCA if
Yep.
you know, got
somewhere
plenty
where
of
there's
chairs
enough
in there.
parking and people know where to go, and
Yeah.
we can put signage and maybe postpone it 15, 20 minutes to let everyone get there.
I think that sounds good. I mean, we'll find a location. So we agree we want to have it in person.
I
We
was
just
gonna
want to find
I was just
a
gonna
viable
add-
location.
Or ask a question, but, and I like Sean's idea, Commissioner Farr's idea about having it at a different location. I think the Willows would definitely be open to that. But especially since we were at the last roundtable, the structure of it is, it's kind of hard to run it from a Zoom because it was, everybody was participating. So from a Zoom, you need a point person
It's kind of linear.
to run, to kind of say, all right, whose turn is it to talk? So I think we'll get more done with an in-person.
All right, so we want to wait to see how this hashes out in terms of, you know, where we can have it and whether the school board can find an alternative location or we can. I don't think the Willows is going to work out. I don't think we're allowed to have a group that size inside.
So let's just leave it, we're going to have it in person. We know we want to have it.
That's
It's
the
going to take
preference, I
place.
think.
So for anybody in the public that's not sure right now, based on our conversation, we are having a meeting on Tuesday, January 25th. We may adjust the time slightly, and the location is to be determined.
Yeah, okay. Sounds good. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Would it be appropriate to make a comment about the Fenimore Woods project now, or would you prefer to wait?
Go ahead, no, it's perfectly right. No, go
My
ahead.
name's Michael Kearney. I live at 124 Walnut Avenue. Personally, I think an in-person meeting is absolutely critical, because so you can look people in the eye and see what they're saying. I did want to just ask the board, though, you know, the proposal for to do the evaluation of the stables was tabled at the last commissioners meeting. The board here are the ones who put the proposal in. Does the board still support submitting that proposal to the commissioners in light of the fact that the total amount of money is going to go up, because the proposal will now include the remediation for the hazmats and mold, et cetera. So I just wanted to make sure that it is going to be on, or that you continue to support, all right? It looks like it's going to be on the agenda, but the board continues to support, spending the money to do the evaluation.
We haven't taken any action to the contrary. Does anybody feel we need to revisit that?
We initially looked at $15,000 to $20,000. And what would be
And
the
then we
increase in
upped
the
it, I
hazmats?
think, didn't we,
Yeah,
by a
24
couple,
and change.
24 maybe?
24
With
something.
the increase?
Well, I have the update, and I can tell you what it's going to be.
Okay.
The cost is 35. It's 34,818 is what the proposal is that we as staff plan to bring before the commissioners on the 24th.
Okay, because I believe our resolution would have been I think it was 24, right?
4,860.
So do we need to reconsider that? I mean, we recommended, I mean, this is a good point. We recommended it at the 24 level, and the cost was something of an issue, at least with one of our members. He's no longer a member, but that's a big jump.
Yeah, okay.
And that does include the hazmat evaluation?
It does, yes, it takes into consideration. So the 24,860, which the Parks and Recreation Board had recommended in December, the difference between that is the hazardous materials assessment by a sub-vendor.
I don't know that we need to revisit it. We gave an advisory opinion that the board consider this, and since we gave that opinion, it changed, but it's still before the board. As I view it,
I can't- I
it's
don't have
before the Board of
resolution.
Commissioners.
Yeah, I don't have that resolution in front of me right now, but was it limited to 24? I mean, did we put a cap on our recommendation?
Our
It was an
recommendation is
amount.
24,860.
Can I just
Yeah, go ahead. I'm
jump
sorry,
in?
Commissioner.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't squabble if it's going to be 24 or 26,000. I think that's negligible. I don't know, did I share my pictures with this board at the last meeting? Okay, can I did, Tammy was kind enough to give me a key to the stables. And if this board so pleases, I can show pictures of the inside of what it looks like, especially to you, the board who may not have seen it, as well as the people in the audience. If you so desire, I think Ian is on the way to get those emails. It's up to you. Take you about,
Are we interested in that? I mean, I would like to.
I would too.
Okay, yes.
okay. So Ian, if you hear that and you're able to find my email, if you can, if you're able to put them up, because and I took a picture of the roof, and I know that this is not a terracotta shingle roof like you have at the Willows, but everything is in beyond disrepair to the point where I was felt like I was doing something illegal being in there. So that's hopefully Ian can get that up in a second right here. But yeah, and
We're gonna get this on our screens?
oh yeah, it was definitely not that you want to give tours, but I think that it may be beneficial to everybody on this board. I don't know, Maggie, if you had the opportunity. Okay, have you been in the stable?
I haven't been in because I didn't have a key, but I don't think, I think I see the stable, if you want to say renovation project, as a total roof gut, a total gut inside. I mean, there's really nothing there. What's going to be there is going to be moldy. I drive by there almost every day. It's got trees growing out of the roof, holes. It's clearly been getting weather. It was only covered up with tarps quite recently, and the tarps have sort of blown off anyway. That I think that, that's what the feasibility study is going to tell us. And I know part of what you voted on last time was, are we really voting on $25,000 to $35,000? I mean, we knew it was 25 plus hazmat last time to take this off the table. Versus really looking at it as the ideal site. The masonry, it's a rock structure, is not in that bad a shape, but the roof is totally rotten. Completely have to come off. And it'll have to be totally gutted.
That's why the original plan was what it was, to raise it. I mean, I don't, I'm not trying to be facetious about it, but I mean, there definitely is concerns. And the 35,000 is, once we do that study, we may need to invest more money to learn a little bit more. If there's, still design segments that we're looking for. I mean, I just want to put a footnote to that. Sometimes with the designers and the architects, we get down a rabbit hole.
If you guys may want to move on to the next point, and then we'll come back and I'll
Okay,
get
yeah, I
these
think maybe
pictures.
okay, yeah, if you guys are.
But I think that the question just remains then. When I keep thinking about this project, I keep thinking about the usage. And I don't want to get too far off on discussions that we can have at the roundtable meeting, but I think we also need to come back around and confirm how we want to use Fenimore Woods. You know, do we want to continue to hold reservations that we know range from, you know, groups of 15, 20 to, you know, we do have groups that are there that exceed 150, 175. You know, was just there at a few of them last year and have pictures of the parking and how disorganized that can be for those large groups. So, you know, I think the usage is pretty critical in what we see in the future. You know, do we just want to have a park that folks can go to and enjoy? And, you know, we know that reforestation and, you know, we know education and environmental aspects and components are so important to be part of, but, you know, do we want to keep using the park in the same fashion formally, you know, from a permitted standpoint to the way that we always have? And I think that's still a question that we need to answer, because that ties to the stable and how they're used for bathrooms, and that ties to the pavilion and how it's used for organized groups.
And if you took away the permitted use, that would only leave Macrone for that type of use, right?
Yes.
So then you dump that traffic and everything there instead.
Where we continue to see annual increases, of course.
So there are a couple moving parts here, and they all sort of,
I also would like to say that since in this whole couple years, is what we've learned is it's important to ask these questions about usage and what that means and that permitting, but that we also incorporate what we're learning from the residents about the history of the parks and incorporating that all together, that we don't lose sight of at least hearing all of those perspectives.
But I think if we're prepared to do a rebuild, I mean, it costs, what, $300,000 or so for the prefab over at Tennell? No, 200?
It was over 500,000.
Okay. So there goes your 1.6, 1.7, whatever's left, right there. That's just, and I'm trying to be a Debbie Downer on this, but I think it's a practical thing. We have to get to the point of practicality, and that we're not going to be able to do this entire thing. And I think, I agree with you, Tammy, that we need to sort through the stable, what we're going to do with it. 10 years ago, when I was in it, Bill Quinn and I were in there a lot, it was unusable then. I'm sure it hasn't gotten any better in 10 years when we see Commissioner Farley's pictures, but I think we need to start prioritizing. And I think it has to start with the stable.
I think it looks like Ian may have them. You he's gonna switch it. I'm gonna see if I can do this. Okay. He's probably gonna. Sorry.
It's kind of small.
Yeah.
Zoom in.
That picture right there was just to show the corner of that roof is totally not flush, so the amount of water that's going to seep in there and mold, and unfortunately damage to the stone, would deteriorate the integrity of the stone. So that was the picture there. It's not only a new roof, it's the rafters and the beams, and it could be termites and who knows what. And then that's that picture. The next is, there you go. That's no terracotta roof like at the Willows. And then this is inside. Just everything's falling apart. Obviously, there's no water, which is good, but the temperature abuse, the plaster has fallen off. There's The trash is less concerning to me because it's all going to get thrown out. But the narrow doorways, so even if there's a wall that could be maintained, it's all going to have to get gutted. And the bathroom, so that's the kind of the inside of the foyer when you walk in, and then then there's the bathroom. I think I got the bathroom, which was. Yeah, there you go. It's just general pictures. Tammy said I could go upstairs, but I honestly didn't feel that that the stairs were safe. I think these pictures, if hopefully they can tell the story.
May I comment again?
Yeah, go ahead.
Michael Kearney, 124 Walnut Avenue. No one's denying, that the stable is in poor condition, but it was also, right, that's not the entire story. I think the fact is, if the evaluation isn't done, you're basically, at this point, making the decision to raise the building, and you're still going to need restrooms, right? So, and to Commissioner Meyer's point of trying to get a holistic view of, it's fine to say that it would be too expensive to make this into restrooms, but you can't say that unless you know what the replacement restrooms would cost, where you're going to attach them to the sewer, how much you want to do with all of that. It's a major expense for the entire project. The restrooms are. Reusing this as the restrooms is an option, and, right, it is a historic structure. All right, that is architect designed by a well-known Philadelphia architect. It sits in the middle of a historic landscape, Fenimore Woods, which has been there for 150 years. So we may not be in the business of historic preservation in the township, but the township itself makes a point on all of its public advertising of being, this is a place where you find trees and history. And I don't think the township should be the one necessarily, without going to great lengths to make sure that that would be the only option. And even not a restroom isn't necessary. The only other option is raising the building. You may be able to do something else with the structure just to preserve it. At the minimum, just leaving up the stone walls and leaving it as a ruin. Would not be my preference, but at least it says someone was here, something historic happened here, and we appreciate that. Thank you.
Can I just kind of respond to those comments? And I totally feel what you're saying. I hate any historic structure being knocked down. And the fact that it was left to deteriorate, I don't want to point fingers, but we're at this place at this point. Now, what it would cost to the opportunity cost to build something else, I can only speak to something which is new and modern and not necessarily pretty, but that's the comfort station that was built at Emlenton Park. And we were able to get it done in what was supposed to be I don't know, a $150,000 project, give or take. Am I correct, Tammy?
In the bond, I think it was 280.
Okay, 280. Eventually wound up being probably $500,000 plus with re-engineering, materials, labor, making it handicap accessible. I mean, the list, as you know, and this board has spoken about it, goes on and on and on. If you could keep the walls up as just the last thing, I am all for that. Then again, I don't want, it's a park with children. I don't want it to be a safety issue. I don't want us to do that. So your points are well taken. It's a board that has to be voted on by 4 commissioners. So obviously you kind of see which way I'm leaning. But there's 6 other of them out there, and that's a great discussion to have with them. But I appreciate your comments. Your comments are great. No one wants to see a beautiful historic structure get knocked down. I don't know what the alternative is, and if it's even feasible to possibly be spending good money after bad. But those are my comments.
Can I, Jim Higgins again, 102 Lowell Avenue. I think, with all due respect, we're getting way ahead of the analysis here. We have 18 to 20 community members who have come out to the roundtable discussions. They're not here tonight. They have a voice. And I think Commissioner Farhi's moving in the direction of tearing the building down. The people that I know that started this effort to save the stables and to keep the trees at Fenimore Woods would not agree with a preemptive decision to tear down the structure. So I would ask you to slow down, let the next roundtable group get together and have their voices heard, and then you'll have a lot more information. You can make some decisions and make some recommendations to the Board of Commissioners. Thank you.
Thanks. My feeling is that the immediate issue before us is whether we're comfortable with the recommendation we sent to the commissioners last month and just want to leave it be, whether we feel that maybe that isn't enough guidance because we now know that the cost of the feasibility study is going to be another 10 grand more, and therefore we feel maybe compelled to, revise our recommendation, or withdraw, or whatever the correct word is, rescind the recommendation we made before. Tell me if you think there's another alternative out there, folks. But my personal feeling is, and this is just me, and I could change on a Wednesday when the moon was full, but that maybe it is worth, I think 30-something thousand is a lot of money for a feasibility study, but maybe it's worth it so that we put to rest, we really feel as well informed as we can be about this building. If it really is a total goner, loser, we will have given it the college try. People who will be unhappy about that will feel at least they were, given a fair shot, and that, maybe they'll even change their minds and decide whatever the costs are going to be to repair this, it's not worth it. Or maybe not. Maybe we'll come up with some good news. What I would think would be good news anyway, that it would be reasonable to preserve this building and use it for bathrooms or whatever. But those are my thoughts. Board, weigh in. I mean, what do we think we need to do here? But I think the immediate thing is we've got a recommendation out there now to the Board of Commissioners. Is it okay as is? Does it give them enough guidance? Do we need to up it? Do we feel so strong that we want to rescind it? I don't even know what the process is for that, but there must be one that we can overcome it. What do we want to do here? What are people's thoughts? Board, weigh in.
I personally would like to see it raised, like you said, the interest is there from the community. And we give it the old try, put it out there, take it as far as we can with this evaluation. The community feels comfortable with the decision that comes back if we raise the numbers to find out if it is truly worth it. And I do think that we're getting way ahead of ourselves, just like having a discussion tonight. So I'm all for raising it up for, the 35, was it 30, 35,000?
Okay, thanks. Anybody else want to weigh in? Either on the substance or the procedure.
So what we voted on last time, or recommended last time, was that simply a structural analysis?
It just didn't include the hazardous materials evaluation. And it was also feasibility study to see what the cost would be to renovate it towards public restrooms as well as storage. And then obviously would include the ADA, it would be code compliant and, all the township ways and all of that would be looked at relative to that. So basically at the end of the day, we would have a concept structure, like a concept design, if you will, on what this could look like, and then a feasibility of a cost assessment on what it would be to turn it into that particular design. And the contract leaves room for not only Gannett Fleming's presentations and time and meetings, but it would also give us a chance to go back and forth a couple times as well if we wanted to make some revisions. But when I mentioned before, sometimes, we get down the rabbit hole a little bit with the contractors. if we decide we want to do something different with the building, because I know that we've talked a little bit about, you know, what would a hybrid structure be like, you know, something that retains the history, but, you know, it's more of a facade, if you will, of the history and does, you know, take down portions of it. You know, obviously, if we went back to Gannett Fleming to have them look at it in that regard, that would be, you know, an additional cost if we went back to them and said, okay, let's look at adding a pavilion onto it, because we decide we want some sort of a covered structure, you know, adjacent to it or near it or contiguous to it in some way. Those would all be additional costs.
So aren't we getting ahead of ourselves on the hazmat? If the feasibility from the structural end is, it's hopeless, then does it really matter what the hazmat remediation? Maybe I'm missing the term of art, the hazmat, whether that's sort of like an underground storage tank type of remediation versus if we're going to continue using the structure, what we need to do to make it inhabitable.
Well, the hazardous materials piece was something that we called out in the legislation that was brought before the board in December. So they wanted to table it as that was a portion of why they wanted to table it, was so that they could have that understanding. Meaning, you know, is there asbestos? Is there lead? Are there some other type of, you know, is there mold concerns and things of that nature? Along with, of course, as I had mentioned, just giving a chance for the new commissioner, Maggie Myers, to take her seat. So I know that was one of the things that the board was looking for, which was why we moved forward to try and get that and bring that back.
So here's what I'm just wondering, because I want to make sure we do what we need to do so that the Board of Commissioners can do what it needs to do. Do we need to do anything, and maybe Commissioner Farr, you know better than, you know, than anyone in the room, is what we have done already and sent to the Board of Commissioners enough to get them moving on the decision-making, notwithstanding that we haven't really considered the cost of the hazmat stuff, and that at the time we made this recommendation, we were thinking about all the feasibility stuff aside from, or you know, not considering the hazmat stuff. Is this an adequate recommendation for the Board of Commissioners' purpose? I didn't say that very clearly, but I think you know what I mean.
No, thank you. This is your board. This is Parks and Rec. You came up with that determination. You capped it at 25,000 or whatever. And I'm saying if it's 25 or 28, I don't think that's going to stop or preclude anything from happening. So that was what you originally decided, and I think that's fine. Now, if you want to add a comment to it after seeing the pictures, that's fine too. And hearing from members of the audience, and we'll probably hear from a bunch more from the people that watch this video, and they'll contact you guys. They'll contact Commissioner Myers, and that's actually why I wanted her sitting up here, with the microphone so she can comment. I'm happy with your recommendation. I'd love to say that I'm undecided. I think I have the information that I need. But there's, like I said, there's 6 other commissioners, and you need 4 votes. And anything that you want to add, anything that you have, contact us. Via phone or via email. And I think that's kind of my opinion. So you guys are doing a great job with handling this and listening to the public and having this conversation. We're just adding to it, so I don't think that hurts anything. But again, I asked Commissioner Myers before the meeting to sit down here on the side. I don't know what's this called, Tammy. The side dais. So if
the bullpen.
Yeah, the side dais, we'll call it. So if
penalty
Commissioner
box.
Myers wants to add, I think that's I think that'd be terrific.
I've pretty much said I'm still juggling numbers here, basically, not feeling good about the whole stable scenario as far as feasibility. But I really do need to sit down and juggle these numbers a little bit more. And, I think that we're looking at a huge cost to build a new restroom from the ground up. We're looking at a large cost to raise it. And if you add those up, how much are you left with to spend on the building that doesn't drain the whole budget for the whole park? which is basically where we are. We also had some expression at the Board of Commissioners meeting, no, I wasn't on the board, at the one in December, of there is a contingency of private people out there that may be willing to do a public-private partnership and contribute some money. You know, if we could raise $25,000 from a private source for this feasibility study, grand. You know, I think that that would be worthwhile, but that would have to be knowing that it's for the feasibility study and not $25,000 to save the stables without knowing the full brunt of what the feasibility study is going to say.
Okay, guys, so here's my inclination, just to be perfectly clear, that we make a recommendation to amend our prior recommendation to include after the number $24,860, comma, exclusive of the costs of, I don't know what to call it, the hazmat evaluation? I mean, how would you word that, Tammy? So in other words, so that the board knows that we were satisfied with 24,000 going to what we thought was the feasibility study a month ago, that anything, well, maybe that's not really the way to do it. Anything additional is not something that we did or didn't recommend, but we think this is a reasonable sum to spend on the non-hazmat portions of the feasibility of the study. Am I making any sense here?
Yes, you are. I mean, I would say take your motion from December 9th and maybe just add on to it with the addition of the hazardous materials proposal and study.
I think if we did that, if we were to say, we recommend conducting a feasibility study, or recommend architectural and engineering services that will review and conduct the feasibility of converting blah, 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 and within that we mean, and the hazmat's going to be a part of that, then my inclination would be to up this figure to 35,000 or something, which I would be prepared to do. Because I really think, let's get the study done. I think if people walk away disappointed, they will at least know that it was fully studied and we did the best we could realistically. If it looks like it's not a totally pointless exercise, I like the idea of maybe there can be some additional fundraising that offsets some of these costs. You know, not a $500,000, but offsets some of these costs, takes the edge off. That would be good too. But I don't want to kill that possibility now. I want to study a little bit more. I do. This is my thought. So maybe I should word what my motion is. That we amend the recommendation from December, whatever day that was.
9th.
December 9th, to provide a recommendation to authorize architectural and engineering services, including hazardous materials
assessment. And
That
there's
will-
also like an indoor quality assessment and testing part of it. And then if you want to revise the amount, it would be
Okay, indoor
$34,818.
quality assessment and hazardous materials assessment? These are two different things?
Hazardous materials assessment, and then there's a part of it that's the indoor quality assessment and testing.
Okay, so I mean, if I said, sorry to drag this out, folks, provide a recommendation to authorize architectural and engineering services, including, this is the new stuff, including indoor quality assessment? Is that the
I
word?
would say including hazardous materials assessment and indoor air quality assessment and testing.
Indoor air quality assessment, that will review and conduct the feasibility, ... and change 24K to just around 35,000.
34,818 if you want to be exact.
Okay, 34.
Because that is, like I said, that's the proposal that would be
818.
for,
That
before
makes
the
it look
board.
like we really knew what we were talking about. But again, I don't think the board's going to, fret over, a few pennies. So
And I apologize for not having that motion written
Tammy, no,
out.
it's okay. We're trying to be creative here. So that, I move. Anybody second that? Okay. Any discussion?
Just to be clear, the hazmat, maybe I missed it, and I asked the question before, and I may not have picked up the answer. if the architectural study comes back and says it's hopeless, is there any point in doing it? The hazardous materials? Or is it something that's just, regardless of what we do with that pad, we need to have a hazardous material study? I don't know the answer to that, that's what I'm asking.
If we have the
If we have to do it
intention-
anyway, then I'm sold on it.
We would
If
have to
don't-
do it anyways. I
Okay.
mean, if we're evaluating this A to Z, we would have to do it anyways.
Okay.
Right, and if we didn't, and if we had, I mean, I think if we're halfway through the feasibility study and the feeling is this is hopeless, this is gone, and we don't have to go continue with it, do we?
Then what would make that determination, though? Because, I
Well,
mean,
I don't know, I'm just raising.
do you
the
know what I mean?
possibility.
Like, I think we would see the study all the way through to see what's feasible. I mean, the task of the engineers and the architects are to basically put this building back together so that it can be usable and
Okay.
tell us what that's going to cost.
I'm in support of the full feasibility study because I think then we have that done.
We have it, and there will not be any question marks about what we could have looked at or couldn't have looked at or should have looked at or whatever. Okay, so anyway, I made the motion, it was seconded, all in favor? Aye? Who do we have? Do we have Howard, Bill, no? I'm sorry, I don't, put hands up.
I just have a quick
Oh, I'm sorry, you
question.
want more discussion?
I just have one question, and I don't know, maybe I'm playing catch-up. Did we do a historic evaluation, a historic building evaluation on this? Or did that include that, or did I miss that? Because I believe it was brought up by a few people, but have we had someone that has done a historic evaluation on the building?
I don't know that we've had some sort of official, professional historian do anything. We've certainly had some sort of lay, amateur, if you will, people who are pretty good at what they do. So I think that's what we're relying on in terms of, does it have any historical significance?
Okay. I'm just asking because I know that people have gone through this before and they evaluate it based on a point system, and they have somebody that comes out and there are many people who've gone through this. Do we keep it or do we do it? We're not the first. And I'm just asking if we've had anybody like really go out who has like a historic evaluation, does like it's actually like a logarithm that they do, because I know that, I'm just hoping, are we missing something that wasn't accounted for before? And I didn't know if the firm would be doing that.
No.
So.
No, this doesn't include
That
a
just, yeah,
historical
and I'm all
assessment.
for, like, I'm just kind of putting it out there that, that would also bring a little weight, though, to what perhaps the public's saying is also where I'm going with that. Because if there isn't, and it comes back, because it's a point system, there's like all these categories, and they go through an analysis, and then it's kind of like, it is what it is. Or maybe there is more to this, and there's private groups that would have a lot of interest based upon what the historic evaluation found. I'm just kind of trying to bring us out of making some thoughts, and I was also on the Radnor Historical Society, so I'm just saying that there are companies that do this, and I don't even know the cost or if they do it for free, but there are companies that do this, and I'm
Does
just
it-
wondering if it's can be considered.
Would it also then trigger historical preservation things, right? So
Well, it would
say-
only if they found something, right?
Well, so say they found something, and then, it's another question, as we talked about, triggering ADA, that if you
Well, I think-
put it through a historical evaluation, that is, I don't even know how that's state, county, what is it? Is it,
Well, it could be state or federal, but state would be the most.
I mean, there's companies, private companies, public companies that do this. They go out, though, and if you buy a house and you want to know truly what we're talking about, they go through the house and they can tell you everything about it. That's what they do, so. I'm sorry,
Again,
Sue.
though, does it trigger HARP, right, Historical Association?
I
where
have
they-
no idea.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know, but,
I mean, I could
Sorry.
speculate, but I really have no idea. And and also, obviously, if we're going to do such a formal professional study, that's another expense. So, it's almost like which expense do you want to incur first?
I was just trying to accurately be able to, without us all making guesses, to say truly what this is, because it appears to have some historical relevance. I'm just saying, so.
No, I think it's a very good point, Christine.
Sorry, sir.
I'm
Well,
sorry. Go
I'm
ahead, sir.
interrupting you.
That's fine.
Michael Kearney, 124 Walnut Avenue. I was a co-author of the National Historic District nomination for North Wayne, so while an amateur, I know something about the process. I think what you're talking about is having a building evaluated to see whether it might be eligible for listing on the National Register. I suspect that the stables would not meet those, because that's where there's a point system and so forth. I'm thinking the stables themselves would probably not meet that standard. And even if you were to go to that trouble and it were declared eligible, there's still no protection within the
There's no
Radnor
protection.
ordinances that would protect the building. Federal, state, or it's certainly not federal, certainly not state. Radnor could pass ordinances to protect it, but they haven't to this point. So I don't think that's, but it is listed amongst the historic structures or historic entities on the Historical Society's list of historic properties, both the stables themselves and Fenimore Woods as a whole, both. So I hope that maybe clears things up.
Yeah,
a little.
it all turns on whose opinion you want, or whose certification you want, or, what credential you want. The Willows is not on the National Register, I don't
And I
believe.
wasn't trying to go for an award or register. I was just trying to say to accurately claim what this is.
Yeah, no, you want to be sure that.
I want to be sure because I don't know.
It's got
and-
value, yeah, it's
Right.
got value.
For Doug McCone, 216 Palmer Avenue. I'm going to make a suggestion. When I worked for the feds, I ran AE contracts, and there's certainly a possibility that you could maintain the 4,800 as the base and say, have an option to go for the hazardous material contract if in fact you could come to the determination the building can be structurally salvaged, then you move on to do the other thing. You
If
could
we think-
structure it that way and make
If we
that
do-
recommendation.
I mean, thank you for that comment. I mean, if that is the way that it should proceed logically or chronologically or whatever it is I'm trying to say, I think that makes sense, but I'm not sure that I heard Tammy say that it's that linear, that you would look at the structural stuff first and then proceed with the hazmat. Tammy, maybe you can go over that again.
The question would be, do we have to make the award of the entire thing at one time, or might they be willing to award the base of the structural evaluation and have as an option?
They can do that. We can structure it however we want them to do it.
And that way you're committing?
Absolutely. I think what we're trying to do, though, is get an A to Z understanding. And we're also running on a timeline.
Okay.
And I'm not saying that to spend more money and speed it up and, let's just study stuff unnecessarily. But I think the goal is to kind of understand, like, every portion of what the restoration would entail, because in order for there to be an accurate cost assessment on, what this building could look like if it's renovated for bathrooms and storage and it's, put back together, the way we would like it. And, obviously we try to, have it match the historical components that are there. Part of that is understanding, remediation of lead, remediation of mold, and so forth.
Tammy, can these activities, or whatever you want to call them, proceed concurrently, or do they have to proceed one after the other, like structural and then hazmat, or can they be happening at the same time?
They would be happening at the same time.
See that?
Because they are two
given the
separate
time
vendors.
We want to move along, costs are going up, and we just want to get this thing going. Yeah, so so I appreciate your input.
That's
That
fine.
was a very,
one
logical
other
thing
point.
to proceed on.
You made the comment about the Willows. In fact, it is eligible for.
Oh, it's
National-
eligible.
The National Historic Register. 10 years ago, I started asking questions about it, and I asked the Historic Preservation Office for GSA to check it out, and it was actually originally called Rose
Garland.
Rose Garland.
Hey, I'm the expert on this. I just wrote an article. What do you
yeah,
want to know?
In fact, she suggested that we find somebody to actually write up the formal nomination for it. But it has been listed as eligible. which
Yeah,
is-
the point is that, a building, just because it's not on the National Register, a building can still have historical significance, is my point. And it depends on what is of value to the community more than what is of value to, a bunch of, I was one of them too, federal bureaucrats down in D.C. So I can say that because I was one.
Sorry.
Tammy, will the Board of Commissioners continue to table this if we don't approve this extra money? That's my question.
Good question, Bill.
I
I
don't
mean,
know
if we don't approve the extra $10,000, just hypothetically, does the board continue to table this until we do?
No, because the premise in which they tabled it was not based on having a board recommendation. You know what I mean? Like back in December, so, which was why I just kept it moving.
Right.
Because I think they were enthusiastic about evaluating it. Actually, at the January 3rd meeting was the expectation of when it was coming back. Unfortunately, with the holiday, Gannett Fleming, who is the architect and design engineering firm, was not able to get the hazardous materials proposal in time.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Farhi?
Yeah, just real quick. So Christina, that is an absolutely brilliant point, that this board should reach out to the Radnor Historical Society. I think that the next Board of Commissioners meeting is the 24th, if I'm not correct. So there's still a little bit of time. And Mr. Kearney, you've done just a terrific job as a historian. If that's something that you want to reach out and grab that information and share that before this board votes, that's important. If there is that historical value, then yeah, I think we need to put that first, and then we need to look at this is my opinion. Again, it's only my opinion. Look at the historical value. If there is true historical, yes, it's old, but what is it that we don't know necessarily? And then from there say, okay, it's super historical. You know, I know it's built in 1910, but like, if, you know, George Washington slept there, then yeah, we're going to save it at all costs.
On the ground.
You know, or if it was any kind of historical. But if it doesn't have those metrics or those milestones, and I don't know what they are, then we can start evaluating it just based on the integrity. So I think we need to see this move on, but I definitely think that was just a brilliant point, that Christina, that you brought up, and we can take a pause, but I still would like to see, again, this is just me, like to see this being voted on, but there's time to get that information out there. So hopefully it's
Just
the
to
best
add
of
to
both
that
worlds.
point, I'm not looking for, I don't think we're looking for any kind of awards or any kind of documentation. I'm just saying I would like to know what historic value it has, just from that standpoint, because I've heard so much about it, but I'm just asking for that. That would be great. I think that might help the argument.
I made a presentation to this board last year on this subject. I have but I only made verbal comments at that time. I do have written materials that I can provide to the board within the next few days, God willing. Okay. No.
Yeah, and Mr. Bernie, I do think, and I think Commissioner Farhi said this, but I want to emphasize that it really would, I believe, be helpful to enlist the assistance of the Radnor Historical Society. They do have some clout or cred, or whatever it is I'm trying to say, and I think that would strengthen, the case on the historical value of it. I mean, I think Christina's point is right.
Yeah, Christina, you nailed that on the head there.
All right, where does that leave us? My concern is, and maybe it's fine as is, and maybe we have time to do this. I don't know how fast the Board of Commissioners is going to act, but my fear was that I didn't want the Board of Commissioners to be in a position of saying, well, we have this recommendation from the Parks and Rec Board, but they only rected 24,000. Why, now it's 35,000, 34 something. We don't have them recommending that we go that far, so we don't know where the Parks and Rec Board stands. And if they're only willing to go to 24, then gee, what does that mean? And no, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be in that position if in fact we feel that we would support an additional 10 grand going to a feasibility study that includes a hazardous materials assessment. So that's where I'm coming from on this. So I guess, again, the question is that something that the Board of Commissioners would be troubled by not having, or am I making an issue out of something that's probably not going to be an issue, and we should just leave things well enough alone? Use your words, Commissioner Farhi.
I think that the board was understanding that it was 24.8 plus a hazmat study.
Okay. Well, then maybe.
So it was just a
maybe we don't need
nebulous, it
anything.
hadn't been done. Tammy was guessing it was going to be at least $10,000. But I'm not sure you actually said that at that meeting. You may have said that as an aside to
Maybe we're
me.
fine.
But they understood that that did not include the hazmat study.
All right. All right, withdraw my motion. I think we'll stick with what we've got, and hopefully the Board of Commissioners understands where we're coming from. Well, and, you know, our two commissioners here can certainly convey that. And everyone will do more homework. You guys will give more input. And maybe that's it for Fenimore for tonight? Okay. It's still Thursday. Yes, it is. Okay. Next up, Odoricio and Cowan, basketball court renovation projects.
We awarded the contract to Horst Incorporated. They're going to actually, as of right now, the tentative schedule to begin and start mobilization is on March 10th. So unfortunately, there aren't any plans to make a start here over the next couple months. I think we have a real winter happening right now anyway,
Yeah,
so that's
finally.
probably a good thing not to get started, just to be hung up again. So, and it'll be approximately a 2-month process, barring any significant weather events or, lockdowns, things of that nature that could hang up the project. And actually, both of those projects at Odoricio and Cowan will run concurrently. So they will be happening at the same time, which is terrific news. So it's not going to be like one after the other. So hopefully by the beginning of summer, we have the basketball courts open and ready to go.
Great,
I'll keep you posted on the updates.
great. The Cowan Park Transition Bridge.
It was installed over the course of the last couple days, and the
Good.
project is complete. So very excited.
Wow, okay. My favorite topic, the Willows Park Preserve, concerns about dogs in the Willows Park. I have nothing new to add on this, other than I'm over there a lot lately, and I'm seeing dogs running all over the place, not on the trail, in the park, the main part of the park. I think from last time, we thought that we would set up some sort of kind of a roundtable on this issue as well when we had, time to do so. That's still the position I think I have, is that we need to have a date set aside where we draw input from the community on this issue. Does that still sound right to everybody? Tammy, I'm not sure whether we should just do that as part of a regular Parks and Rec Board meeting, at least first, or start with something more roundtable-ish right from the get-go. I mean, what would be your inclination of what would be the most useful format?
I would probably include it as part of this board. I think that's the most efficient use of everybody's time.
At least as a starting point and see where it goes from there.
Definitely.
Okay, so how do we, I mean, it's been on the agenda now for a couple months. How do we actually, this time we really, really want you guys to come and talk. I mean, how do we advertise that we want to bring people in to talk about this topic and not just have it sort of as a, buried in the agenda and nobody shows up?
So I had prepared just a draft of a sign that we could put up in the kiosks. I thought that was one way. We could put that out there at the Willows. We could start to circulate it through social media, through e-newsletters, and different advertisements. We could go as far to make some signs if we wanted to have some things in locations where the kiosks don't exist. But I think if we start to, market it and advertise it, I
Yeah.
think it's just, what do we want to tell people? Obviously, we want, dog owners and non-dog owners to join us for feedback. But I think we just have to determine, are we just looking for, input, on usage experience? I think we need to channel maybe a statement a little bit on what we're
Well,
looking
that's-
for. And then down the road, obviously that's going to start to narrow in scope as we would maybe get more towards, a specific meeting.
Okay, yeah, I think the idea of focusing, and you want to hit the sweet spot. You want to focus, but you don't want to focus too much, because you do want people to come in with their, ideas from left field that we never thought of that turn out to be actually pretty useful. So, yes, because again, we have it on the agenda tonight, and there's no dog park people, or dog, owners, or dog, anti-dog people here. So, yeah, we need to do something to make sure that crowd shows up so that there is some active participation. So whatever we can do to promote it, I guess, is what I'm saying. Okay. Anybody else on that? Okay. Park Playground Communication Board's proposal.
In December, I had worked up some images, and right now I'm reviewing them with the resident, Marcella Gibbons, who had come, and she was one of the people who were here that made a presentation. So right now, we're trying to identify the icons that would comprise the signboard. I have been in contact with some sign companies, and we've been getting some information together. But right now, we're trying to get the icons established that would actually be, in this case, we're looking at Anki potentially and Clemacrone as those two initial sites.
May I ask a question?
Sure.
Okay. Tammy, in terms of funding on that, is that park impact fee money would have to fund those boards?
It could. It could. It may be more of an operating expense for us
Okay.
as well, depending on the cost. So at Anki and at Clemacrone, I was looking at more of a composite aluminum-based sign that would actually be affixed to the inside of the post and rail fencing. So it wouldn't be your standard post and finial sign that you see, out at the parks currently, or the example that we were shown. It would be a little more simplistic, but still, have stature, and communicate what's needed, but won't be as expensive. So I don't know what that cost is yet. We're still working on that, but I think it's something we could probably fund out of the operating budget, and if not, we could certainly look to the Park Impact Fund. I don't think it would be an excessive cost in any way.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, I'm looking at the audience, and I'm going to ask if there is any further public participation. I'm suspecting the answer is no. Are we ready to adjourn? Anybody want to make a motion to that effect?
I will.
All in favor? Quick, get those hands up. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Mary.
Oh, and I didn't even get to use this. There we go.
There you go.
It's not official until I do that.
Daylight,